Good afternoon, ladies and gents. Can everybody hear me up the back? No? Louder? Just have to get a tech to actually be able to do that. Okay. We'll work on that one for you. I do have a loud voice. I usually get told to shut up rather than actually speak into a microphone. So, ladies and gents, good afternoon and thank you for coming this afternoon. My name's Mark Williams. I'm the incident controller for the current bushfire emergency within the Shoalhaven and Irrabadella areas. This afternoon's meeting is to advise the local community around here about the Currawang fire specifically, but also that of the Commandant fire and the other fire emergencies that we have within the area. Since the 26th of November, we've been battling the Currawang fire, and it's grown to over 236,000 hectares. The reason for a lot of that growth is the location of where the fire has situated itself in through wilderness country, through inaccessible national park areas, and has moved through those wilderness areas and given us a lot of grief out along the coast over those times as we've had the weather conditions, fire conditions experienced over recent times that we'd all remember. The original fire was started by a lightning strike. That's been confirmed from fire investigation, and crews, both local, also around the state, interstate, CFA, Queensland, Tasmania, international, New Zealand, and also crews from specialists from America and Canada have been part of this firefighting contingent in the Shoalhaven. As we're all aware, anybody who's been watching the news over the last 3 months, New South Wales is experiencing one of the worst droughts that we've ever seen. It may not be the longest drought that we've seen, but it is certainly one of the most severe in the lack of rainfall that we've been experiencing the last couple of years. Even in the last week myself, I've noticed a significant change in our vegetation in the form that you can actually see the dieback occurring within that vegetation, just showing how dry the nature is, and obviously to that makes it more and more fire prone. Combine that with the hot summer that we're having, no rainfall, and some of the windy conditions makes firefighting extremely difficult. To aid us, we've been using aviation resources as well as including the large air tanker and very large air tanker. Anybody in and around Nowra would have seen the action that's been happening with those aircraft, and again is continuing today and will continue into the foreseeable future. Unfortunately, we are in a situation that these fires are unable to be contained until we get significant rainfall or they run out of fuel to burn. With that, there's still a significant portion of the Shoalhaven with vegetation that will burn, and this fire will continue. We have seen this fire move up the coast through in a general northerly direction, but when we get the northwesterly winds, that is when it gives us the grief and sends fingers of fire basically out to the coast, impacting on those coastal communities. Coastal communities that we've had impacted range from North Durras down to south, right through and including Bomaderry, Bowling Point, Kyola, and all points south down to the North Durras area. Amazingly, and thanks to the absolutely awesome work by the firefighting fraternity out there, including those aviation assets, our limited structure loss is looking at around 16 properties at this point in time. Thanks, I'll pass that on to the firefighters out there who are doing the hard work. I don't have to yell so loud now, thank you for fixing that. With that, I'll just run around now the actual fire grounds that we have at present, just so to bring everybody up to speed with their location and what we're up to. So I'll start firstly with the Commandant fire. The Commandant fire is burning in and around Forest Road, Commandant. The fire on its first day and into the second day crossed Forest Road and into the outskirts of the South Nowra Industrial Estate and back ends of East Nowra Warragee area. That fire is burning, whilst it's predominantly flat land, it is burning in very thick coastal bushland. There is a lot of fuel in the area. There is a lot of disturbed ground where the access has been through the population base in and around that area. But there's also a large tract of paddock, pasture and heathland. With that includes peat. And if anybody knows anything about firefighting, once it gets into peat, It makes it extremely difficult to extinguish, so much that it actually burns underground and pops its head back up at other times, often many, many metres away from where it actually goes underground. Combine that with the fluky and dry winds that we've been receiving, even from the northeast. Predominantly our northeasterly winds around here are coastal and come in from the shore with some moisture and humidity involved. Even these winds are coming in dry off the water and drying out. Humidity levels are so low that the spot fire activity of this fire continues to create hassles for the fireground. As late as only half an hour ago, we have had a breach of one of our containment lines on that fire. Crews and aviation assets are currently working on that, and they are confident of again tonight getting a hard line with the use of heavy plant machinery around that tonight. Unfortunately, coming as we can experience today with the 32 degree temperatures that we're receiving today, tomorrow and over the weekend we can experience 36 up to 38 degrees. Culminating in Tuesday, when we will have a strong southerly change coming through. We're unknown exactly at what time in the afternoon that will be, but if anybody can remember a week ago now, that is one of the worst fire condition days I've experienced on the coast, let alone around New South Wales. That weather day saw that Currarang fire move in a northerly direction of over 12.5 kilometres. It consumed what was the Thunderstorms fire at that point in time, and was responsible for the loss of 12 buildings and outbuildings in the Sassafras area, as well as numerous homes and dwellings in the Nerriga area. What we are seeing at the moment, as I said, with the fires areas being so stressed, is that the fire activity is warranted that bad, and on conditions that day, it is not safe for our firefighters to be in front of that fire. Days like we are going to experience again coming up to over the weekend and into next week, we'll see our firefighters fall back into defensive firefighting tactics, advising the public of where the fire is, making sure that the public is safe wherever possible, and defending the homes with defensive firefighting. We will not be in a situation where we can stand firefighters in front of the flames and expect them to pull this thing up. As I said earlier, at the present stage, given the weather conditions that we're receiving, we are not in a position to get containment lines around this fire, given the expanse of it, before the onslaught of the next weather conditions. So back on and finishing off the Commandant fire, we're hopeful that with patrolling over the weekend and heavy patrolling and aviation assistance, we'll keep that fire wrapped up and contained over the weekend. But given the results of the last few days with that spot fire activity, it is likely and possible that that fire will come alive again over the weekend, and we'll be responding heavily to that as it threatens those coastal properties. Areas of concern around that fire is obviously the areas of East Nowra, Warragee, as I just mentioned, but also once we get the northerly winds on it, it does open up the tract of land through Woolamaya and out to the coastline around Huskisson. And then with the southerly change can push back up the coast into the likes of Colborough, Greenwell Point and such. So again, residents around those areas need to be acutely aware of that fire in their landscape. Watch the Fires Near Me application. Listen to the alerts as they come out from time to time. Onto the Currarang fire. Crews are heavily engaged over the last 2 days in backburning off the Princess Highway in an area known from Little Forest Road in the south up to and including the back end of Wandandyan. Crews have then used Turpentine Road as a fallback option or a containment line, backburned off that up to Main Road 92. At this present time, they're still out in that area. They have had numerous spot fires over the line, but each of those have been able to be caught so far this afternoon. I can't stress enough how dangerous this work is for the crews and how tenuous it is for us to actually have those spot fires occurring behind the crews, and it's imperative that obviously we jump onto those as soon as possible. So it is a risky tactic that we use, but without engaging that tactic, that fire will continue to run unabated in the northerly direction and likely cross the Princess Highway and impact on those coastal villages east of Wandandyan. There was a significant spot fire in the east of Princess Highway 3 days ago around the Mundayong area, which is on the way out to Sussex Inlet. I'm happy to report that spot fire has been wrapped up and will be continued to be patrolled over the weekend as well. So I'm sure you can also understand that every time I say it's going to be patrolled, that's another one or more firefighting appliances that are having to be tasked to that area, which then makes it less available for us to do other work. So we do have a large number of appliances around. We are getting additional assistance in this weekend for this hot weather, but there will not and cannot be enough for a fire appliance for each and every residence. It is not a feasible expectation, and it never would be, even if we were the only fire in the state, which we are not. Moving up to the north, we are currently also backburning off Main Road 92 to the west, and are hopeful that we can contain that fire to the general west and steer it down along the Yalwall area and along Burrier Road. That will then tie out to Burrier, and then we are hopeful to try and get favourable weather conditions and have the fire approach the Shoalhaven River in the cooler part of the evening or overnight, that the Shoalhaven River may have a chance of pulling this fire up. Experience over the last month has shown, however, that is again a risky option and likely not to hold if it gets any pressure from the incoming southerly that we're expecting on Monday afternoon, Tuesday. What that will mean is that if the fire does breach the Shoalhaven River and gets to the north side, it will then open up a whole area of added bushland right through and including Kangaroo Valley and potentially up to Fitzroy Falls and up to the back end of the Illawarra, up to the plateau up there, which name escapes me off the top of my head at the moment. Therefore, this afternoon's meeting is again to advise everybody of the likelihood of that occurring, the possibility of that occurring, and imploring on the public to ensure that you have your bushfire survival plans in place, know you have that conversation with your family, and know what you are going to do should that eventuate. The Rural Fire Service is pretty proud about our warning systems of being able to get them out, our watch and act status up to the emergency alerts, and being able to stick out those messages to people to start shelter in place and the like. However, I must please ask, do not rely on that occurring. With the amount of fire that's on the landscape, not only in the Shoalhaven but around the state, it is technology. It can take some time to get out. We will ensure that it doesn't wherever possible, but it should not be your only means of defence or being alert of what is going on. We will continue to hold these meetings wherever we can in localities to advise locals exactly what to expect where we can. But we're also engaging this afternoon, obviously, as the initial area to bring people in those areas that may be in the fire path up to speed to let you know that it is likely that if this fire does jump the Shoalhaven River, the north side of the river right through to those areas I just mentioned could and will become under impact of this fire as it progresses. That's the downside. The good side is that, as I said, those additional crews that we have in here, the plans that we have in place within the incident management team, we are working on everything from the alert status, the systems that we upload for particular areas, suburbs and the likes, are all in place and being planned on a daily basis. We also have numerous containment options available to us that we are going to try and employ before that gets to that point. However, most of those are through bushland, and again, over the experience of this summer, those bushland fire trails, the likes of that have bush either side of a break where we would normally hold a normal fire, are not holding at this point in time. So we're coming back to more known designated roadway systems that we know that we've got a chance of holding them on. Over to the south, down to the south of the Currawong fire, for information more for people up in this area, we do have the Southern Division, and that's for the fire that's jumped the Kings Highway and down into Maria. There is a large finger of fire burning in the upper area around Government Bend that has jumped the Kings Highway. That has been fairly stagnant over the last week, but we are expecting that to take a run under the northwesterlies that are forecast for the area. And with that opens up their coastal villages from Bateman's Bay, Mogo and down to Maruya at this point in time. They're also battling a new fire down there at Araluen. However, we are hopeful we'll get containment on that later on this evening. But again, that's a sap on resources that we've had to do for the last 3 days. Over to the west, some of you may have seen that the mapping for the Currawong fire has changed slightly. and that's because we have excised a part of the Pallarang local government area over to the control of the incident management team, which has been set up in Queanbeyan, and that is now known as the Charlie's Forest Fire. And that includes such areas as Nerriga and Mongalo and obviously Charlie's Forest. They are now managing that section of the fire, and it is now known as the Charlie's Forest Fire, and it sits at around 36,000 hectares at this point in time. I can advise they are still actively firefighting out there, and they've had breaches of their containment lines out to the west today. Back up to the north, again, we are working along Braidwood Road, Main Road 92, to wrap that up and get that road open as soon as practically possible. At the moment, the biggest issue that we have with roadways and keeping them open is the significant amount of tree fall we are getting. The bushland is that stressed with the drought that any heat whatsoever being put into the ground is seeing very large trees falling down. We have seen numerous accidents over this fire season, and I'm sure I don't need to remind everybody of the tragedy that occurred only earlier this week with 2 firefighters being killed by a falling tree in the Buxton fire in Sydney. We can't afford to have a repeat of that, especially for our emergency services, but also especially for members of the public. Therefore, we will not be opening roadways again until it is deemed safe. We have specialist arborists, trained chainsaw crews going through and clearing those dangerous trees. In regards to the Kings Highway, that roadway system will be closed for over a month. The reason being for that is not only the fire impact into that area, but it's also the significant area where it has burnt through involves a steep cutting. The steep cutting was also stabilised by the trees and the vegetation that was around, and because that is burnt, we are seeing significant rock fall in the area, and again, too dangerous for the members of the public to traverse, and it is going to take at least that month for them to repair that road system and get it open. Trust me, I know it's Christmas. As much as a lot of our people didn't get to spend it at home, we are acutely aware of the impact that this is having on the local community, both in tourism and also friends and family coming to visit. We are attempting to get this situation under control as soon as possible, but it is unfortunately, due to the circumstances we have, the size of the incident and the weather systems that we have, practically impossible to get those roads and this system under control in the foreseeable future. With me today, I've got members out of my incident management team, Deputy Incident Controller from National Parks, Ian Smith, on my left. Also Brad Collins and Phil Patterson from the Rural Fire Service as our public liaison officers, and also Inspector Ray Steins, who's the Local Emergency Operations Controller and also the officer in charge of Narra Station for the New South Wales Police. Ray heads a team that assists me and my team in combating this incident. I need to reassure everybody that we do have a full incident management team based in Narra, with specialists in every field, from planning through to the logistics and also obviously the operations. But what we are also supported for and with is Ray and his team, which has got everybody from local land services, the local council, health, ambulance, SES. Every agency is in board and on board with that facility and in that area and with that team to provide us with the support that we need at any one time. I am absolutely proud of the team that we have in place, both from Ray's side and the incident management team, that we have a badge-off approach right through the board. We have members from all those different agencies coming together in a united front to actually form together and put all of our expertise on the table to assist the community, and it's working second to none. We are being held in absolutely high regard at a state level and also national level, where we've had visitors from outside the area, from different states, coming over to see how we are managing this event. So that's a little bit of kudos to everybody and all the other agencies that have been involved. That also flows down actually onto the fireground as well. And again, it's a badge-off approach. We have been assisted no end, not only the volunteers of the RFS, which we all know and love, but also from our sister agencies such as Fire Rescue, National Parks, State Forests, and all those other agencies that have come in from other areas of the Australia. It has been an absolute godsend to us to actually have that increased number of active firefighters out on the ground. We've seen fire trucks from different agencies being manned by people from different agencies. And that's the first time, I must say, I've seen that in my career of over 30 years. So it is truly an international event, and it is truly a mark of everybody who's involved here to assist the community and get us back to normality. So to the firefighters and everybody out there, I also say a huge thanks. Locally, we're also acutely aware and prepared for any new ignitions. What we saw last Saturday with the weather condition that came through was what we call a pyrocumulus cloud form above the fireground. The fire broke through a destabilised atmosphere and created its own dry lightning storm overhead. That is possible to occur again on Tuesday, and what that sees is a marked increase in fire activity, and wind directions on the fireground can be very, very erratic. And that means wind conditions coming from areas where we don't expect it for, making the firefighters' jobs just that little bit harder. It also means that the fire can make those huge runs as it did last Saturday, so we're also acutely aware of that. We are also aware that other accidents occur. There are other ignitions possible, so we do always ensure that we have that backup capacity to respond to new incidents as required. Let's hope they aren't. What I'll do now, I'll just check and make sure I've covered everything. I'm getting the thumbs up, so that's good. So what I'll do now is I'll open it up to a few questions. Please, if you have an individual issue for your own particular property that you wish to address, we will all hang around here after the meeting. But if you've got any specific questions in relation to the firefighting efforts so far, please let us know now. Brad's going to walk around with a couple of microphones, and Phil, you can take this one. Any questions at all from anyone? Don't be shy. One at the back, of course. Right up there.
In your gutters, when you're cleaning them out, often on the bottom there's like this pit type moss all along the base, and we've got those closed open over gutters. Do we need to? Is that going to burn like you just suggested, Pete will? Should we get all that out before we fill our gutters?
My recommendation would be yes. Whilst ever it's so dry, it would be yes. If your gutters are going to be full of water, it wouldn't be so much of an issue. So if it's very difficult to get under that leaf guard, I'd probably say you might be right as long as you keep those gutters full of water.
Thank you.
Just a query, what is the possible impact on the Nowry Hill area?
Okay. So the question was about the possible impact of the Nowry Hill, and that would be dependent on two things. You've got the Commodore fire burning to the east, and you've also got the Currawang fire coming past out on the west. Any of those breaches, depending on the wind conditions at the time, could impact on the Nowry Hill area, and as such we've actually got those polygons loaded to try and advise as much as possible. One thing I did forget to mention is crews will be continuing to undertake firefighting backburning operations throughout this evening and throughout tomorrow before those wind conditions to come up. We will be ceasing those operations as that weather changes for safety measures, and so we actually get some depth on those backburn operations to provide that sort of access. So you can expect to see an increase in smoke in and around the Main Road 92 area, which has been occurring today, and also in a lesser area around the Commodore fire.
Do you think the fire will come to Camberwarra and Tapatally and that part? You said it would go to the valley.
Yep, certainly. So as it burns through the valley, any easterly push from that wind will see those areas such as Camberwarra, Budjong, Tapatally, any area with any sort of bushland interface which joins onto that valley system through the Moreton National Park can and could become under impact. So yes.
What do you recommend we do with full barbecue gas bottles and fuel cans that are in sheds?
Okay.
Tip them out or what?
So the question was in relation to what to do with flammable objects such as gas cylinders and that around your properties. In general terms, keep them away from your house, get them out into the open area where they're not going to have any sort of impact around that area. A gas cylinder will give you a long time of exposed heat before it fails, in general terms, but if you're unsure about it, certainly move it away from your building by about 10 metres and you should be fine.
Mark, just a question from the audience. Was there any plans to do backburning north of the river?
At this point in time, backburning isn't planned for north of the river. We won't be undertaking any backburning operations north of the river until that fire actually breaches the river. We are doing a lot of preparatory earthworks in and around some properties that are likely to come under impact should it be, and obviously they're fanning out as the fire priority would need. The other thing we're also doing, for everybody's information, is we're also involving our neighbouring districts, areas such as Yass, through to and including the areas such as Bungonia, Tallong, up through Bundanoon, Wingelow, Penrose, right through to Fitzroy Falls are all engaged, and they're all starting to have these community meetings as well, some of those starting off tomorrow.
Okay. Yep. I just wanted to inquire if it goes to Kangaroo Valley and up, is there a chance it'd come up over Berry Mountain and over?
Over Berry Mountain?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It is certainly possible with any northwesterly push as the fire moves through the Kangaroo Valley. Again, anywhere within urban interface with bushland and the continuous timberline from wherever the fire is moving could come under impact. What we are hopeful for is obviously that a fire comes through as a flanking fire, meaning it's side-on approach. But again, any northwesterly push with a fire that's gone past, we'll see those areas to the east potentially come under heavier impact.
If you're stuck, like you see on the
Turn that one off, I think. Sorry, mate.
It says if you're stuck and you get stuck at home for site approaching, on the sites it says you have to take shelter. If you're stuck at home, where's the safest place in the room?
Okay, so the question was if you are choosing to shelter in place, and you'll notice with some of our warnings that we go out, we try and give the public as much notice as possible. In any event, we'll try and tell people that if you are going to leave early and leave now. Once it becomes too dangerous for that to occur, we will ask people to shelter in place as the safest option. One of the most dangerous parts of our industry is, and with dealing with the public, is having members of the public on roadway systems as the fire front goes through. If you've never been involved in a fire overrun, if you've never been involved in a major bushfire event, it turns day into night. It is an acutely distressing event and is something you must be acutely aware of and ready for if you are choosing to stay and defend. With that, as I said, having people on a roadway system making a last-minute gasp attempt to try and get out. We have multitudes of people and a lot of evidence where people have actually driven off roadways, caused traffic accidents. The roadway's been blocked by trees and people have been trapped in their cars because of that. So again, the best advice is if you are going to leave, get out well and truly early before that happens. If you choose to stay and defend or shelter in place if that message comes out, have your property prepared. Now is the time to prepare your property if you already have not. Get those gutter plugs in, remove the flammable material away from your house, mow the lawns, have the sprinkler systems ready, have wet blankets ready, have the bath full of water, all the standard ones that you should all well know to protect yourselves. In the event of a fire, inside, if you have to shelter in place at your house, inside the house with the windows closed is the safest location. After the fire moves through, and you will hear the fire front move through, as you can, open the door slowly. Once you can get out, you can then go around and start putting out spot fires. In the event that the house is alight, obviously you may need to retreat to another safer area, but hopefully that's not the case.
How have the rainforests fared in this fire?
Okay, so in relation to that, right through the state and from experience up in the northern tablelands, I can say that rainforests normally only burn once in 100 years. This year is that year. We have seen rainforests right through New South Wales and basically the entire length of the Great Dividing Range burning. Where firefighting used to involve the use of rainforests as a part of our containment options, We can't rely on that at the current climate and the current vegetation dryness that we have.
He answered my question.
We have sprinklers to go onto our house. We live on Capawara Mountain. The fire came over in '68. It came across the top, it jumped over the top of us and went to the next ridge because we're down on the side. We're protected from the west. We don't get the westerly wind, so it kind of crowned and crossed over. We have sprinkler systems. We can put water onto our house continuously for 3 hours. We just don't know when to start them.
That is always the $6 million question. So again, build your networks up. Don't rely on the RFS applications. They will work and we will hold them up as wherever possible. But talk to your neighbours, talk to each other, look at people around the trap, making sure everybody else is all right. Stay abreast of the situation. And in relation to when to start your sprinklers, I can't give you that answer. It's something, it's an individual case-by-case basis. It'll be a decision you need to make at the time. And obviously, when it gets to that point, having those sprinklers on will obviously provide you that extra bit of protection. But it is still not a guarantee in a firestorm type event.
Over here.
Could you give us the frequencies of the best radio stations to listen to in the event that we are relying on that, as well as the Fires Near Me application?
Yes, certainly. So whilst we try and keep all of our local radio stations up to date wherever possible with the fire's progress, one that we are promoting throughout New South Wales is the use of the ABC. So locally here, ABC Illawarra, further down the coast, ABC Bega have been the ones that we're doing more regular broadcasts, and they actually cut into their regular programming to do the bushfire announcements.
Yeah, can we access the GPS for the fire front? In other words, if you're making a decision to stay or to go, it would help us if we knew the exact GPS location of the fire front.
Okay, so the question was in relation to can we provide the exact GPS location of the fire front. The mapping that you will see on the Fires Near Me app is as up to date as we can bring it up to. So that does take some time for our mappers to digitalise what we get the intel from the fireground or from our aviation assets, but as soon as we upload it into the system, the map that you will see on Fires Near Me is the utmost accurate that we can provide everybody. In relation to the breaking in of the ABC Illawarra, I know it is happening. It certainly happens once we break into watch and act status or emergency alert status, and that is when they break into their local programming. And some of you may have actually heard my raspy voice on there a few times already. Up the backs.
Can you hear me?
Sorry, 2 seconds.
Can you hear me? Right, Terry Barrett, I'm from Bomaderry. You haven't mentioned North Narrow Bomaderry so far, but certainly, surely the fire, once it gets across the river, and there's an easterly direction to that fire, we're going to copy here. Bomaderry Creek burnt last year, August last year. It's ready to burn again already, I can assure you. And the vegetation along the Shoalhaven River on the northern side, coming in from Tapatully through to North Narrow, Bomaderry, and within Bomaderry a lot of very dry, old vegetation is going to be a problem for us. So I think the people in this area need to know the likely, any thoughts you've given to how you might be handling the situation locally. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. So, as I mentioned before, any person living in or around urban interface with bushland is at risk of this fire moving through. You only have to go onto Google Earth and have a look at those vegetation bands as they move through. If you are joining any one of those, but we also need to understand that this fire does also, and any fire can spot. I mentioned that with the Commandant fire, and what we have been seeing during this event is spot fire activity occurring up to 12 kilometres in front of the actual fire front. And that's under extreme circumstances, those extreme weather days, but it is possible. So even if your patch of bushland near you isn't right on the edge of... Who that covers that? I just hope mine's on silent. But moving on, thank you. In relation to that, even if your batch of bushland in or around your premises is not joined up to where the current fire front is, you are still at risk of spot fire activity or new ignitions. So again, my best advice is have your property prepared, have your own personal plans prepared, have that discussion with your loved ones and know what you are going to do.
You guys are doing such a great job and thank you so much.
Thank you, and once again the team will take that on board, but I'll certainly pass that out onto the firefighters who are the ones that are out there doing the hard yards. In relation, and Ian just prompted me, part of the weather system that we are going to be seeing moving ahead is a chance of thunderstorms in the area. We do have a band of lightning that's gone through down around Bega at the moment, and whilst that's not a concern to you people here particularly, over the coming days, additional lightning in and around the area, if it's not adjoining with rain, can also be a source of new ignitions in the area. Most definitely.
Are you
Just wondering if people with larger animals are safer going to Berry or Kiama Showground?
Okay, so individual circumstances will be determined by those individual people. Without knowing your own animals and what you have, it's a decision you need to make yourself. By all means, those people in those circumstances, if you need assistance in your particular circumstance, feel free to come up after the meeting and have a chat to us and we'll try and point you in the right direction. But in the event where we do have major fire impact into urban settlement areas, we will have evacuation centres open for anybody displaced by the fire, and included in that will be the availability for people to bring their pets, including horses, etc., to known locations. One of those being Narra Showground, and obviously there'll be other ones set up in safe locations. Apologies for that.
Okay, you suggested that if we are going to go early, but where are we going to go?
Good point. Again, those evacuation centres, if they're set up, are obviously a location. Again, your own personal plan should identify that. Have a think to yourself. Know where is going to be a safe place. Know your friends and family that are around the area and in locations that may not be under such a large threat. Have your identified areas and know and have that conversation with the people that you're actually going to go and visit. Larger built-up areas well and truly away from fire fronts are obviously the key location, as well as those evac centres. In a lot of the towns and villages around Shoalhaven, there are what we call neighbourhood safer places. Those neighbourhood safer places, you'll also see at the writing on that sign, is a place of last resort. That is when all else fails, or you don't have that plan in place, and you need somewhere to go because you are compromised where you are. You can go to that location and it will provide you with an area that could be and should be safe for you to survive. Now, I must say, it is a place of last resort for that reason. It is probably going to be an open field somewhere. There will not be a coffee truck to serve you donuts. It will be horrific if the fire comes in and around that area, and there'll be very little support. So it is a place of last resort should you need to go to. And again, part of your bushfire plan should be knowing where those are, and they are all listed on the website.
I'm just wondering, behind the Warragee shops, there's a lot of bushland in the Green Orchids estate. And on the Watch RFS side, it's saying it's only 3 kilometres away. What are the chances of it coming through there?
Okay, so again, just mentioning that 3 kilometres is well within spotting distance. So a spot fire into that area is possible. We are mindful of that. We are patrolling that fire and will continue to do so in that area. The more that we patrol those areas, the longer that a fire stays cooler for, the safer it becomes. But given the fact that we're still getting fire activity in and around that area, again, implore on people to stay vigilant, stay aware of your surroundings, have that network and watch those warnings and adhere to those warnings when we send them out. Trust me, from someone who has to issue those warnings, the process that I have to follow through is not an easy one, and it's not one that I make lightly. And so when we do issue them, we really appreciate the fact that people heed the attention that we do ask you to do at that time.
How much assistance are you getting from the AMF with their aerial business and their heavy equipment?
The Defence Force?
AMF.
So the military in general?
Yeah,
Okay, so the question was how much assistance we're getting from the military in relation to this firefight. I've got to say that our local arrangements here in Nowra are second to none with our military. With HMAS Albatross at our back doorstep, the ability and the use and the support that they provide us is second to none. And that's been even before this firefight. Personally, I've had great relationships with the base commandant up there and the base management. We have our airbase set up on HMAS Albatross. We have now got that facility up and running where we're actually reloading and refueling the very large air tankers. So that's a coup to the area. It makes our job a lot easier having those planes being able to turn around and back over the fireground in such short time frame. But we're also receiving assistance from the base in the form of accommodation and also support in our logistical arrangements. So, and they are a key part of the EOC as a member of that EOC and provide additional assistance as we need to.
Just wanting to ask, do you give different priority to high density population areas or rural lands?
Higher priorities to higher population, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, so as part of our firefighting effort, we obviously look at the priority areas. We obviously have all of our mapping data, which is supplied through obviously state, federal areas, and also local government areas. On that mapping, shows us the threatened assets where population is, and that's from a single rural dwelling right through the urban population areas such as Bomaderry and the like. On top of that, we also ground truth the area. So we send crews out, we send public liaison officers out, community field liaison officers out to patrol an area before a fire comes under impact to ensure there's not other areas that we haven't had marked on any mapping for what reason. What we try and do is do the best we possibly can for everybody that's out there. It would be nice to say there is a fire truck for every property, but there's not. So at times, what we may see is actually having to consume an area where there may be only a couple of residents, but will provide a fire truck or a support, or at least advice into that residence to let them know the level of support they have. A lot of that also determines where we get to larger rural properties where you have lots of pasture, cattle grazing and the likes of that. A lot of those properties are well and truly cleared and basically self-reliant. They have their own firefighting equipment on board so they can actually self-help themselves. So that will also be a determining factor on how we approach the firefighting. But we are acutely aware of larger population areas where we get into urban civilisation. People tend to be not as well prepared or not as expecting a fire occurring, so we will pour additional resources into that area to protect that as required.
Hi. Do you have an idea of how long we're going to sit in limbo? By that, are we looking at finding alternative? I've got horses. We physically bought a house a week ago. I moved down from Sydney. I want to take them back. If I can say, look, I'm looking at 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 2 or 3 days.
So as I said earlier, the duration of this fire will be determined on rainfall. It'll be determined on weather systems. It'll be determined on the amount of fuel that there is to consume. Firefighting efforts at this point in time are not pulling this fire up. Where a fire will run in a day, where it won't run in a day, is purely determined on so many variables it's not funny. Everything from the vegetation type to the topography to the angle, whether a fire approaches in day or night or the cool of the morning. I can't give you an answer to that question. It could be 3 days and it could be through to Fitzroy Falls. It could be 3 weeks or 3 months. Until we get rainfall or until those items are determined, there is no answer to that question, I'm sorry.
I'd like to ask, instead of you telling us everything that we should be doing, what we can do to help firefighters personally.
Okay. I've got to say that question was how people can assist the firefighters. The biggest thing you can possibly do for any firefighter out there is take the time to say thank you. That's all they want. I can honestly say, as a volunteer myself, and coming up through the ranks and now into the position where I'm at, a simple pat on the back, a simple thank you as you see them walking down the street, boosts their morale 15-fold, and they will go again and again and again. I have trouble telling my people to go home, and that's half of my biggest argument, so they don't get too tired. They don't need much. They are very well funded across the board. The different agencies, we supply most equipment right across the board. We have emergency funding and provisions. We are supported by local, state and federal funding, and we will continue to provide that funding. There is nothing that we can't provide them that they essentially need. So that simple thank you is what will boost them no end.
Wasn't that fun?
All right, I might take one or two more, and then I'm more than happy, as I said, to hang around. There are leaflets. I hope people have had them. And if you want to take on your own individual items with us afterwards, please feel free, but I'll grab two more. So.
We have 2 children, and nobody wants their children to see a fire, come through the air. We're in Camberwara Village. And, being American, I've never witnessed a fire before, so I'm pretty frightened. I'm just wondering, how long do we wait? We're sitting in Camberwara Village, the fire starts coming through Tapatali. How close is too close? I just don't even want to be there, and the house doesn't matter, it's our kids.
Okay, so another question on when. If you're asking yourself that question and you're seeing fire in the distance, I would be saying you've already answered your own question.
Yeah.
Your personal circumstances where you're not comfortable, the best place to be is to leave and leave early.
Yeah.
Okay, last one at the back.
Just 2 things maybe that perhaps could help. Number one, people that have swimming pools, what sort of notification do you want out the front of the house if that's any help for the water?
Okay, so that question is in relation to the use of what we call static water supplies. If you have a pool, whether it can be used or tank water, all of our firefighters are trained that once they attend your premises, it'll be the first thing that they look for. A, usable water, and B, can we get access to it? And then, if possible, basically we'll use it if we absolutely have to, but where possible, we'll try and engage with the property owner. If you do have water supply available, I've seen everything this year from people drawing on the side of their tanks, even to drawing on the gutter that there is a pool in the backyard. But as I said, our firefighters will use that and will investigate those areas on a case-by-case basis. And aviation obviously can see it from the air, so that makes it a little bit easier as well.
And the second one, just with the Shoalhaven River, with the tidal section of the river, is it worth us trying to help you to maybe talk to people about getting some vessels in there that are small, that have monitors that can draw from the water, like you see putting out fires on ships? Is that worth looking at for the tidal section of Shoalhaven?
Yeah, without specifically seeing the type of equipment that you're talking about, that would be very difficult. That was in relation to actually using boats on the water to extinguish the fires that approach us. And the other thing is what time and under what conditions that fire approaches the river, whether it be safe to do so also. So certainly we do have boats within the Shoalhaven. We can call on others around the area should it be required. But those monitors and those pumping systems are fairly complex that would require that. But we do have access to things like marine rescue also to assist if need be. All right, ladies and gents, thank you very much for attending this afternoon. I really appreciate that everybody came out this afternoon to get this attention. It shows me that obviously people are treating this serious. It is a serious consideration that you need to make. Please continue to stay abreast of the situation, and we'll be up here for the next half an hour or so. Thank you.